Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here, and welcome to another plugin knowledge session. In this session, we're going to continue on with the PSP InfiniStrip plugin, and we're going to have a look at the gate modules. So firstly, if you are new to my channel or new to my videos and you like what you see here, please click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. So the gate modules in PSP InfiniStrip, as explained in the video here, this is not something that I use daily, so my explanation may be a little bit rusty in these ones, but we'll give it our best shot and give you an idea of what these modules do, at least in InfiniStrip, so you can see the advantage of them being in the channel strip if you need them. So let's just get into it and let's see if I can show you well enough. Okay, we're back in Cubase and we've got our PSP InfiniStrip open, and we're going to have a look at they've referred to as the dynamics module. Okay, now what they call, well, in the manual, they call it dynamics module. In here, it's just put under a heading called gate. But it includes a expander, a gate, and a ducker. Okay, these are items that I don't generally use a lot of. They have obviously a very good purpose for particular things, which I don't always come across that much. So I'm going to go through it as best as I can, but as I said, I don't use them very much, so I'm probably not the actually greatest at using and explaining these, but we'll go through it and hopefully I'll do a good enough job with it, and we'll demonstrate, obviously, how they function and how they sound. So we'll start with the descriptions from the manual, and we've got an expander. It's a downward expander with a adjustable ratio. So the suggested applications: use this module to reduce noise whenever a track signal is not active. For example, when an electric guitar stops playing for a moment and noise such as hum or hiss are noticeable. Another use is remove the long, muddy ambience of toms or a snare. All right, then we have a gate. This is probably one I'm more familiar with. And this one, they just state it's a transparent gate with adjustable hold function. It is used to clean up crosstalk between drum mics. Just remember, using the shortest attack times or extreme range reduction levels may result in an unnatural and artificial sounding track. By using the shape parameter, you can adjust the behavior of the gate to the shape of the release phase of the instrument to make it sound more natural. All right, and then we have the ducker. It attenuates the main signal when the sidechain signal exceeds a preset threshold. Suggested applications: when you are processing a musical bed under narration or other situations in which you need the source audio to fade behind a main signal. Yeah, that when I think of duckers, that's usually where I think of it, is that, it's a narrator talking over music, and every time he starts to speak, the music drops in volume, and when he stops, the music goes back up in volume. So I don't know how you really switch between them, because they have a totally different function. So this is probably not one that you're going to be switching between to do comparisons of. But we'll run through it anyway, and we might have to just find the right track to have a bit of a play with them and get the results that we need from each type. Okay, so the controls are pretty common, but I would imagine they do slightly different functions or get different results on each one. But we've got our attack. It adjusts the attack time, so how fast something starts or reacts. And, we've got 0.1 millisecond to 250 milliseconds. Got our release, which is the opposite, so it's how fast or how slow the expander, gate, or whatever stops functioning and goes back to normal. We have a ratio control here, so yeah, okay, so the values do change. So on the expander, we have a ratio, which adjusts the ratio for downward expander between 1 to 1 and 1 to 10. So a bit like a compressor, but different in sort of an opposite way, downward expanded. We have our gain reduction meter here, which is going to show how much gain reduction we are doing. We have a threshold knob, so this is very similar to a compressor. So it adjusts the expanded threshold, so where the signal has to be for the expander to start to function, or, has to be below. The shape knob adjusts the shape of the release phase. Okay, so the release phase here, fully counterclockwise to -100 results in the shortest, spikiest release phase, and fully clockwise over to +100 results in the longest extended release phase. The range knob, it adjusts the maximum gain reduction for the expander. Fully counterclockwise allows for the widest range of gain reduction. Fully clockwise narrows the range so that almost no gain reduction occurs. And then we can also set a side chain. So this is what, in this case here, when we're talking about a side chain, it's determining, or this section, not the external one, this section here, you can turn on a high or low pass filter, and it determines what audio the expander is listening to react to. Okay, it doesn't actually filter the signal out. It filters the signal out from the detection circuit only, so only what it's listening to. So if you had a kick drum in here, for instance, and you wanted the expander to ignore the kick drum and not base its decision of whether it's doing any downward expansion on the kick drum, then you would raise up this high pass filter to remove the frequencies of the kick drum from the detection. Okay, it will still impact the kick drum if it starts to do the downward expansion. It just won't make its decisions based on it. And then you've obviously got the other side as well. So you could take the top end off of something, get rid of a cymbal hit or something like that, so it's not listening to that. Okay, and down the bottom, we've got our usual controls, our mute and solo, but we've also got a side chain, so we can set it to an external side chain. So listen to the, set up another track or something like that and base it on that. Or we could add that SC filters module and have it base on that one as well. And the monitor button just lets you listen to what the side chain is. So what the detection circuit is listening to. Now, I would imagine that if you don't have the external side chain activated, that the monitor button will still function for you to listen to what impact these have. But we will find that out soon enough. Now, if we switch over to the gate, we have similar controls. We've still got our attack and release. This time we have a hold knob. So this one adjusts the hold time for the gate between 0 milliseconds and 400 milliseconds. So a hold sort of comes in between the release function and the attack. So when the signal kicks over the threshold or under the threshold, the gate kicks in. When the signal returns to normal and the gate is going to deactivate, usually it's based on the speed of the release, which it still is. But first off, it has to just adhere to this hold timer first. So it'll do a bit of a hold. It'll just stay on for that hold period, and then it will do the release time after that. So again, gain reduction meter. We have our threshold knob to set the value for where the audio has to be. Shape, that's the same. The range is the same, and high pass and everything else. Okay. And then if we go to our ducker, it is basically the same as our gate here. Right, so now we need to work out how to actually use it. So how about we start with a gate here, okay? Now I'm going to actually mute this for a second and we'll see what we can get out of this. So we've got a kick. But you can hear it's got a lot of bleed in there. So you can hear that's already reacting a little bit. Let's turn it up a bit. Maybe not that much. All right, so if we adjust our threshold, you'll see it's not responding anymore. If I pull it up really high, the gate never turns off. So we could find the spot where it just activates. Now what you want to do is make sure that you're not getting in the snare and that, so you might want to... What we also need to do is say adjust our attack, how quickly is it going to respond. Now you can see visually in the meter how fast it moves. Now in drums you may want it to go pretty fast. Now what about the release? Now I mean that just blinks on now. Now we would never fully recover from this one. Now when I say recover, you need to think, traditionally in a compressor, you think of the attack and the release as the attack is where the compressor starts to compress, and the release is where it stops compressing and goes back to normal. Now in a gate, it's sort of the same approach, except the method is slightly different. It's about when the gate opens and when the gate closes. Okay, so if we make it really hard here, let's just see. So you can see the attack here, the shorter the attack, the quicker it opens the gate. So as soon as it hears the signal, opens the gate. If I make it too slow, it doesn't quite open enough. It's only getting like the tail of the kick. It's not opening quick enough. So with a drum, you probably want it to be a pretty fast attack. Now with our release, you can hear now the snare's all bleeding in. The gate's not closing. You can see it's trying to close and it just never closes, because as soon as it gets anywhere near close to closing, the gate has to open again. So you might say, well, in a drum, I want it to be really fast. Yeah, okay. Doesn't sound very natural though, does it? So you might want to back it off a bit, because you want to let the tail of the kick through. Okay, but if you do that, obviously you can still hear the snares coming through. So this is where you can start playing with the settings, because they sort of have a reaction to each other. Now I could also turn the hold function off here. So let's say we have a really quick release. You can hear there, if I put a hold in, we have a really quick release, but we're now allowing a bit of the tail of the kick through. And it's closing just before that snare kicks in. If I go back here, kick is really unnatural. If we go really long, you can hear the snare come in. So you can see how they all have a bit of a play with each other, and you've got to adjust each one a little bit at a time to get the results that you're after, to try and get the most natural sound, but get the results you want as well. Now, what does the shape do? Let's have a look there. I go really short there. You can hear a clunk. So even that almost sounds like it allows a little bit of the tail come through. Now, the other knob you've got here is the range. So at the moment, it's set to infinity. So we're getting that absolute silence there. But you could go, well, I don't want it that drastic. I just want to back off. Right. So if I set it to 0, we basically do nothing. But you might not want to gate entirely. You may just want to reduce the level of those extra drums. So the snare's still there, but it's just very quiet. So if you put it in a mix, maybe it's not going to impact on your drum sound too much. Whereas no gate, maybe the snare's just getting in the way. It's boosting too much, it's annoying you. Now, of course, we could then turn on the high pass filter here and get it to ignore the kick altogether. Which you'll see if we do that. It's not really responding anymore. The gate's not really opening. And the reason we're hearing it is because of this range control. Because I'm allowing a little bit through. So if I put it back to infinity, you can see here, the gate is never opening because what it's hearing is this, which I can't hear anything. So you can just hear the very tip of that snare. Or very tip of the kick, actually. So in this case here, we would not obviously do that. But you could do the opposite and say you don't want to trigger on high end. If you have something in there like a cymbal crash and you just don't want it to respond when there's a cymbal crash or something like that, you can set that there. Now, I'm not going to run through the external sidechain, but if you know how external sidechain works, then, you know, there's no difference here. It's just what it's listening to. It would just be listening to another track to make the call on this. All right, so let's have a look at an expander now. All right, so let's have a look at a bass track here. It sort of rings out here. So the theory with this is that it's supposed to do downward expansion. So it talked about getting rid of noise. So if you turn the threshold up, You can see it's slowly reducing those notes down depending on where I set the threshold. And obviously the ratio. So if you go 1 to 1, I'm assuming it does nothing. I don't really know why you would do 1 to 1, to be honest. And again, you're going to have your attack. How fast does it respond? Alright, we go slow. It should. Sort of just trickles. Do a fast release. Or a slow release. Let's just go middle of the road here. So again, you've got a range. You know, so all the way up is going to do nothing. Bring it down, you do a little bit. Totally silent. And then you got this shape. And on top of that, you can obviously change your side chain so you're not listening to the bass, which would be pretty silly. So if we ignore the bass, it basically just makes it all silent. It thinks there's no signal there to allow through. So you could ignore the top end if you wanted to, if there's something in the way that you didn't want it to hear. Now, if we switch over from here straight to our gate, this one's very quick with those settings. Go to expander, it's a little bit more natural. And the ducker just goes nuts. So the expander to me just sounds a little bit more natural in that rolling off as opposed to a gate, which does it a bit faster. Now you can obviously change your settings on the gate to get it to sound more like this expander here. So like I said, I'm not an expert on expanders and gates. They're not something I use very often. Now, the ducker itself, I mean, look, tradition of a ducker obviously would be that I would assume we would put it in sidechain. But again, you got the same sort of settings, but you got to hold. So you could get it to hold for a period of time. And I would imagine you wouldn't normally do a range of 0. Okay, so what we want to do, let's try and do an example here. What could we do? All right, let's see. All right, I'm going to see if we can simulate something here. I don't have vocals or that. So let's say our bass element here is our musical track, and our keys is going to be our vocals. All right. So what we might do is say, bring that to there. We'll just chop it up a couple of times just to try something out. Okay, we're going to set a side chain, and I'm going to add piano 1. And we'll turn it up. All right, we'll turn on the side chain. Now let's activate the side chain. So we've got nothing in the side chain there. Okay, so that's a side chain. Okay, so we want this to now respond and do something. Okay, so not sure if this is the perfect example, but you can see here, I've just tried to just rush a few settings through. I'd have to do this a lot better than that. But I've reduced the range down. And what we've got is, the theory is that while the keys aren't playing, the bass is just full volume. All right, the ducker's doing nothing. As soon as the keys come in, the theory is that the bass reduces. Now, it's reducing between each of those notes. So let's see. Just going to get this right. Okay, I want a slow release. Or maybe a hold. Okay, so we've got our full bass volume now. Keys come in, bass gets reduced, keys take over. Once the keys stop playing, the bass will come back to full volume. So if you imagine that was a musical part and this was a vocal track, or like narration, you can see how this functions automatically. So you don't have to go in and manually do automation and all that sort of stuff. You can have a Ducker do this for you. All right, so that is a pretty crude attempt at going through these, but as I said, I'm not the greatest on these modules, but you can see they work, they're useful, and they're a great complement to this plugin. Okay, so there is the gate modules for the PSP InfiniStrip plugin. Let me know what you think of them in the comments below. If you do have any questions, please, again, put them in the comments. I'll try to answer them as best as I can. As I said, I'm not really an expert on gates, etc. It's not something that I use daily. It's something that I can struggle my way through and can get the job done, but generally I use other techniques to achieve most of these things than using a actual plugin itself. But it is definitely a useful feature to a channel strip if you want to be able to do everything or a majority of mixing tasks in that channel strip. So let me know what you think of those additions to the plugin, and if you would like to see anything further with those gate functions or anything different to be introduced. If you did like what you see here, please click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. Hopefully the video has been helpful. I thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.